2009 Honda Accord with a 2.4 and replace the alternator. First, you need to disconnect your battery. You want to disconnect your negative first and then disconnect your positive. Reason why I'm saying that, because I'm going to replace my positive and negative clamps because they are bottomed out and they don't stay tightened. So I'm going to have to replace them. Alright, and then I'm going to go over to your serpentine belt and remove your serpentine belt. Okay, you want to remove the serpentine belt. What you want to do is take your power steering reservoir, make sure your cap's on tight, pull it up out of the bracket. There's a little piece on the back, you got to push that up out of the way, and then you can pull this whole thing, pull it up through here, pull it up around. And getting stuck on the little clamps. Now you can do it like that. Get it up out of the way, tuck it in there like that. It's gonna drip a little bit out of there. You might want to put a rag under it. I'm just showing you. And then you get a 14 and a 15 millimeter wrench. Preferably you get a neat, nice long one. Put the 14 on the pulley down below. Put the 15 on the 14 like that. Use it for a cheater, and then you can pull it forward, loosens the belt up, and take the belt off, and then release it back and let the 14 rest against the motor mount bracket. Now that you got the belt off the alternator, release the pressure on your tensioner, and they're stuck against the motor mount and the ABS unit. Now you can bring your reservoir back to where it was, let it hang there, and if you didn't put a rag down there, then it leaked into the alternator like mine did. So when you're going back together with the new one, make sure you use a rag underneath there. Or you can suck it all out with a sucker and put some new fluid in it. Sounds like a good idea. I got a little sucker. I'm going to suck out the fluid out of the reservoir. And I'll install some new fluid. I have this fluid, it's no big deal. That way I just can let it drip all over the place. They're operated, so you can pick one of these up at Harbor Freight. They're like 35 bucks. I use it all the time. Alright, next you want to do is unplug the alt. Be right here on this side, the back side of it. You gotta squeeze a little piece in and you can pull it up. Little tab there, see it? Push that in and pulls right up. Then down here is a little bracket on the back of the alternator, and what holds that bracket onto the back of the alternator is a 8 millimeter nut. Okay, take that 8 millimeter nut off, and then this bracket is loose from the alternator. Now you got the main wire to the alternator, the 10 millimeter nut on the back of the stud of the alternator. You can't get that one off yet. So what you need to do is unbolt your alternator. There's a bolt here on top. That's a 12. And directly 180 off from that is another bolt, and that's a 14. And you need to get down in there with a socket, a long deep well socket, and a ratchet with a cheater pipe on it, and break it loose. Then you can use your regular ratchet to get the bolt out, unloose, and then you can pull it out, pull the bolt up, there it is. And then you got your top one, pull it out, there it is, okay? Now the alternator is loose, or it should be, unbolted. Now you need to get a pry bar in there and pry it out of the brackets. All right, I pried the alternator out, okay, and then I got to the 10 millimeter bolt on the back for the main cable for the alternator. That was a 10. Remove that, and the whole harness comes off to the side. Push it aside. Now you can pry off the alternator from the lower bracket and pull it up. That alternator's in there pretty good. You can move it back and forth. What I did was I stuck a big pry bar down in there and I pry it up against here. Try not to hit that hose or this hose over here. And pry it out. Got it off of there a little bit, and then I can get it loose enough and wiggle it back and forth, and I can pry it up. I pulled it up. Now take the alternator out. All right, you got the new one, the old one. Make sure they match up. All right. I'm taking this bracket off because I don't want to take it off. If my bracket on the old one is still good, I mean, if it's still connected to it, the harness, I'm going to leave it connected to the old one. Because if you try taking it off, you end up breaking the harness little tab, breaking the tab that goes in there. So I'm going to use the original one. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there, get my lower bolt started, and then I'm going to hook up my electrical. Another thing which you might want to do to help you out, because sometimes these nuts are pushed out. What you want to do is you want to take a little hammer and tap that sleeve in there farther. Because when you stick the bolt in there, it goes into this nut, and that nut tightens up, it moves this way and comes out of here and sticks out farther against here. So it kind of smashes the ear on the engine block. So I just take this kind of hammer, ball peen or something, and get in here and smack that flush. So that way when you go down to that ear down there, it's easier to install it. You got your little bolt started threaded in there. Okay. Now you can hook your electrical up, tighten your main cable up for your alternator, put your little bracket on with the nut, plug the little connector in. Now you can start your top bolt, and then snug them up and tighten them. All right, you snugged up the bottom one, you can snug up the top one, and then go down and tighten the bottom one, and then tighten the top one. And now you're ready for your belt. So if you didn't drain the reservoir, make sure you put a towel over the alternator so it doesn't drip in it. Probably should do the same if you did suck it out. Okay, now we're gonna put the reservoir over here, and then we're gonna pull on our tensioner with our double wrenches, and then put the belt back on the alternator. Okay, got the pulley on, the belt on. Make sure it's not off center on any of the pulleys. Look at them all. Make sure it's in all the grooves. What I found out was putting it on all the pulleys and putting it on the tensioner one last. Because the tensioner one is smooth, there's no grooves on it, so it's slid right on there, went nicely. Okay? If you have a hard time, then, you know, if you got one of those tools for the alternator belts, serpentine belt tool, looks like that. With a little handle on it. You can make one of them out of a 1/4-inch rod and bend it. Comes in handy. All right, the alternator's on, the belt's on. Make sure you top off your power steering fluid. Make sure your battery is fully charged. Never put an alternator on and expect it to charge your battery that's not charged. So charge your battery up to full state, and then start the vehicle and double check your output. And that's it. That's how you replace the alternator. If I helped you with this video, that's great. Maybe you can subscribe to me. If you already did, I appreciate it. If you want to stick around, I'm going to see what I can do about those cables that do not tighten up, because they're already as tight as they're going to get. Okay, I took the plastic covers off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them off right here and right here, and I'm going to put on those clamp type cables, which would be this style. Don't really care for them. That's the only style I have in stock. Usually I would use something like this, but I don't have no eyelets on them. Or the Napa ones with just a terminal with a hole in it and you put your wire inside of it and you heat up and you stick lead in it. I don't have those. So we're gonna do these. Okay, I cut the terminal end off. Cleaned it up a little bit. And this is what it looks like when I'm finished. Put that type in there. I'll tighten it up a little bit more once I got it on the battery, so I can get the angle right. Okay, so next video, next part, you'll see it together. Make sure your terminals are clean, and make sure your terminal bolt is loose. And then you want to tap it on there as far as it'll go with a hammer, lightly, till it almost bottoms out. And make sure these are loose, okay? If they're not loose, it won't expand. Make sure you install positive first, okay? And then you tighten your clamp up, and then tighten your little bolts up, and tighten them equally, and make sure they're tight, okay? And next you can do is your negative. Okay, there's your finished product. If you want, you can spray some red paint on here, red in there, and black on here to help insulate a little bit. Other than that, that's it. And another thing, if you watch this whole video, before you even start on it, make sure that your radio, you have the lock code. If it's got a lock type radio, you don't want to be locked out of your radio. And sometimes they're in the owner's manual in the back. You gotta look for it, okay? And that's it. Thank you.